Hello guys, welcome back to part 3 of my Death Guard look through. I'm going to try to make this the last long video that I make, and then after this I might upload a few smaller short videos, maybe focusing on a few specific things, because in this general overview there's not really time to look into every possible combination of things, so I think a couple of shorter videos is going to be the way to go. Anyway, we left off at the first attack, so I'm just going to get straight into it. First up is the Chaos Spawn. Now I'm actually a big fan of the Chaos Spawns. I've thought they have been great all through 8th really. They went from a unit that I honestly probably would never take in 7th and stuff, to being a really good unit in 8th. And one of the reasons is they're incredibly cheap. They're so cheap, they're 23 points. There's not many other things that, for 20, I mean a Plague Marine, one Plague Marine is 21 points. They're just incredibly cheap, and they're strength 5, toughness 5, 4 wounds, 2d3 attacks now. They've got their random chart that gives them another minor buff, AP -2, damage 2, so even one of these things is capable of mincing probably three Marines or so on its own in one turn, maybe better if you roll better. And you can take them in units of 1, which is one of the reasons I thought they're so useful, because it means you can fill out the 3 necessary fast attack slots for a battalion for 69 points, just 3 single ones of these on their own. And I think whether you're trying to fill out a battalion, a brigade, or not, taking 3 of these or 2 of these or 4 of these individually. They're small single units, you can hide them behind terrain easily, to camp on objectives, or to just be kind of like a booby trap almost, a booby trap to pop out on somebody suddenly, and it's for 23 points, it's been hiding there all game, it hasn't costed you anything, and then suddenly there's 2d3, strength 5, AP -2, damage 2 attacks coming in. It's they're really surprisingly good, and if you wanted to run them in a larger unit, say 3 or 6 even, I think personally I have run. Oh no, sorry, it's a unit of 1 to 5 now. I think you could take up to 9. That's annoying. I've actually got 9 of them. Maximum of 5. But still, if you wanted to run a big unit of 5 of them, I think that's pretty valid. I've done it to protect Demon Prince before. And actually now they've got their own dedicated stratagem called Grandfather's Influence, Grandfatherly Influence. And this is pretty cool. It's 2 CP if it's for 3 or more models. Oh no, sorry, if it's 3 or fewer models, it's 1 CP, and 2 CP if it's 4 to 5. So I think that's not too bad. And it adds 1 to the toughness and gives them disgustingly resilient, and the toughness 5 already, so that would make them toughness 6. I think there's 2 different ways of using them. Personally, I do tend to look at them as a very cheap unit that just doesn't really cost you anything, and because of that I would probably not use that stratagem, because when you start to dedicate point upgrades or stratagem command points to a unit that is supposed to be a good because it's so cheap and doesn't cost you anything type unit, you might begin to defeat the point. But that being said, toughness 6 with disgustingly resilient, I think if you did want to take the full unit of 5 and really make a thing out of them, yeah, I think it's pretty good. They're definitely going to just chew 3 Marines fairly easily. I don't think there's a huge amount of other things you can do to buff them, although they do have the Heretic Astartes keyword, so anything that works with that should still work on them. Yeah, no, I'm a fan of them. I think they're good. I think they're really good, and I will probably use them up there. Yeah, 1 to 5. That's a shame. I had 9 of them. Right, Mephitic Blight Haulers. Now, when these came out, at the beginning of 8th, they got the models because I think everybody agrees they're some of the coolest models Games Workshop have ever come out with. Everybody loves them, but I wasn't a fan of them at all. I'm not a huge fan of multi-melters or missile launchers. Strength 8 weaponry has never really been my thing. I normally would prefer to just take las cannons, to be honest, but they grew on me because of their survivability. Even though most games I would take them, they completely underperform with their shooting. They'd miss, or they just not wound things They did impress me with their survivability. Now, obviously that's changed with the Disgustingly Resilient, but so have they to a degree, because like I mentioned in one of my previous videos, they've got their own stratagem now, which lets them subtract 1 from the number of shots coming in. So combined with their Disgustingly Resilient, you know, if they were shot by an autocannon, it would be 1 shot instead of 2, and 1 damage instead of 2. Or if they took heavy bolters, you know, 2 shots that damage 1, it's not as nearly as scary as 3 shots that damage 2. And even against larger things, if you got shot by, you know, a D6 shot weapon and they got 5, going down to 4, it's not bad. If it was a battle cannon, which is D3 damaged, it would be D3 minus 1 damage. Most likely a lot of 1s coming in. You know, so I think that even though they don't have that 5+ save anymore, they're still going to be a pretty annoying thing to get rid of. You know, the weapons are the same. They've still got the stench that makes units subtract 1 from them in melee. So that's okay. You know, for me, I tend to use them as a guard unit, whether that's what I talked about with the Demon Prince or something else. I just think that they have quite a big footprint. They just sit there and they're tough to get rid of. But you know, personally, I've never had luck with them as a dedicated destruction unit, just trying to kill things with their missile launchers and multi-motors. It doesn't really work out for me. But if they work good for you, then that's cool as well. There is a stratagem that lets you potentially heal D3 wounds, well, up to 3 wounds, sorry, I should say, up to 3 wounds for each model you kill in combat. So you could try that. And let me just check if it would affect every model in the unit or if it would just affect one of them. Because actually, if that affects every model in the unit, that's pretty good. So it's called Demonic Gluttony. When a Death Guard Demon Engine model. No, okay, so it would just be one of them. It wouldn't be all 3 getting it, so that's not quite so good. Yeah, no, they're a solid unit. I think that they've got a place. They are more expensive than I'd like, though. I think recently, just coming out of the last Codex, I think they'd actually dropped all the way down to just 100 points. And I think that's why I liked them, because it was a pretty good 300 points. They're up to 140 again now. So it's getting into more of a 400+ point chunk now, and yeah, they might be a bit too expensive for me. I'll have to do some games and see. Now, the Fetid Bloke Drone, it's long been a favourite of mine. I loved it all through 8th edition, and it's better now. You know what? This is crazy. I can't believe how good it is. This unit, it's like one of those. So every now and then, a unit slips past the rules writers, and you think, how did they approve this? How did they let Necrons have the Nightbringer, and how have they let Death Guard have the Fetid Bloke Drone? So they've dropped a wound from 10 wounds, putting them down to 9. So immediately they no longer degrade. So your strength stays the same, your attacks stay the same. You did lose a point of strength. Well, equipped with the flesh mower, you lost a point of strength. You're now only strength 7 instead of strength 8, but with the contagion, still basically strength 8. You're still reducing toughness 7 vehicles to toughness 6 to wound them on 3s. Still reducing toughness 4 units like Marines to toughness 3 to wound them on 2s. So in effect, still the same. Right, but I was never a fan of the heavy blight launcher personally. It was Assault 6, but you were BS 4+ at the time. Now you're BS 3+, so Assault 6 is a lot more reliable suddenly, Strength 6, 8 minus 3 damage 2. It's decent, but I don't think that it's maximising the potential of this unit. I think that that's definitely maybe the least effective of the 3 options, I think, because the Plague Spitter, you've got 2 of them, that's 2d6 auto hits. You can shoot them in combat, they're going to auto hit in combat. I think that's a good option, but personally the reason I like this unit so much is just the flesh mower. It's so good. It was always good because it gave you a flat +6 attacks, so you would have had 10 attacks on the charge with Hateful Assault, and you would have lost I think 1 attack each time you got bracketed, so you'd still have ended up with probably a good 8 attacks on the charge. But now instead of giving you +6 attacks, it just makes each attack make 3 hit rolls, and it has 4 attacks base, so that's 12 attacks. 12 attacks at weapon skill 3+, wounding marines on 2s, AP -2, damage 2. This is just gonna roll over. This is a blender. This is just a living blender that's going to roll over any marine squad that gets in its way, any 2-wing squad that gets in its way. I mean, I always say marines because that's just what comes to mind. That's what most people play. But really anything. I mean, orc knobs, any kind of heavy infantry. This is, 12 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, and it's a plague weapon, so you're re-rolling those 2s to wound. Oh, it's incredible. And not only this, but it has a stratagem of its own, called for demonic hunger or something like that. But basically, it doesn't really matter what it's called. Basically, it allows you to heroically intervene up to 6 inches. Dark Cravings, it's called Dark Cravings. You can heroically intervene 6 inches horizontally or 5 inches vertically. This is incredible. Oh, just so even if you weren't within charge range in your own turn, if anything gets within 6 inches of this thing, you can just use that stratagem and just buzz it in there. It's so dangerous. It's so dangerous. It's so horrible. It's going to kill anything it runs into. Even vehicles at 2 damage, with 12 attacks, it should still probably chip down most vehicles, to be honest. Lighter vehicles. This is crazy. It's so good. I've got 2 of them. I'm probably going to have to buy a 3rd now and try to get that painted up, because this is definitely I expect all my fast attack choices are just going to be these now, and because they're only 135 points. That's the thing. They're 135 points, 5 points less than these. 2 of them is 270 points. Oh, very excited about this unit. This is one of the things I'm really happy about. I can't believe how good it is with the flesh mail. It's crazy. But that's it for the fast attack. So now getting into the heavy support, the Plague Burst Crawler. Now, I'm not going to go off topic too much, but basically I hated this unit when it came out. I hated it. I hated seeing it in back reps because it was trash. It was, it's BS 4+. As soon as it moves, it was a 5+. With D6 shots on the mortar, it was trash. You'd roll, you get 3 shots, missed all of them. It was just rubbish. There was no reason for it, and it irritated me because it's clearly the whole thing is it's a siege crawler. It's just this siege crawling tank that grinds forwards, firing, and it was terrible at the job that it was designed to do. So it really bothered me. And then you had the entropy cannons. They were good, but again, it's 2 shots at BS 4+ if it stays still, 5s if it's moving. So that was rubbish as well. Plague Spitters, they were people's favoured choice, but I never liked them either because at the time, you couldn't shoot them in combat. So as soon you maybe shot them once and then got tagged, and that was it. But now, because of 9th, it was already benefiting because of 9th, just meaning that it could remain on BS 4+ and it could actually shoot those Plague Spitters in combat. But now, obviously, it's changed to BS 3+2. So it can move and fire the mortar at BS 3+. I think that now, if you gave it the entropy cannons, they're damage D3+3 now instead of D6, so they're even better. They also actually gained the plague weapon keyword. They never had that. Entropy cannons were not plague weapons, but they are now. So that's a much more reliable weapon choice. You can fire the plague spitters in combat. It's BS 3+, even if you move, and the mortar has changed to be flat damage 2 all the time now, which is really cool. And of course it's got its own stratagem called, I think, Devastating Blast or something, where it becomes damage 3. You can just pay a CP, it becomes flat damage 3, and I think you roll a 4+ for each enemy unit within 3 inches or something like that, and they take a mortal wound. And of course, if you really wanted to, you could also use, I think it's the Poxmongers special stratagem. Yeah, Bilious Blood Rush. It can shoot blast weapons in combat, so it could shoot the mortar in combat and get +1 to hit, so it'd be hitting on 2s in combat. The reason it would be hitting on 2s in combat is because all of the tanks have, I don't know if it's the Relentless, it's the Exhonourable Advance, They ignore the -1 to hit for heavy weapons in combat, so it would still be hitting on 3s in combat anyway, but if you use that stratagem, it's hitting on 2s. So yeah, I think that now, you know, having these grinding forwards, they do the job that they're designed to do, and that's what bugs me with the rules. They had a concept and the rules did not match the concept at all. Now they actually do. They can grind forwards, they can fire, and even when they get stuck in just smashing people with the big shunt, they can still fire all the weapons in combat. They're really good. Again, disgustingly resilient. The change does hurt them because, you know, just minusing 1 off of damage. It's not as good as rolling 5 dice. It's, you know, arguably better for the infantry, but, you know, just taking a 6 damage lance cannon hit and minusing 1 damage from it. I mean, statistically you'd have -2 damage with the disgustingly resilient previously, and I'd have probably saved 3 or 4 even, because I was like that. But, you know, so it's more fragile technically, but I think that the improvements to its offensive abilities definitely, you know, they definitely make it. It's still good. It's still really good, and it's not too expensive. I think it's 165 points or something like that, which is roughly what it was before. I think it was maybe a bit cheaper, but no, it's definitely a good choice, and I'll definitely paint my other one up so I can use it as well. Okay, now we're going to get into the normal tanks, the sort of normal tanks. I don't know what other people think about these. I don't know if they skip over them because they say, oh, you can, you know, find these in the normal Chaos Space Marines Codex. But personally, I do like the normal tanks. Now, the first one up is the Land Raider, which, you know, I already embarrassed myself in the last video and gave up all of my Death Guard credibility by saying that I liked them and used them. You know, I mean, they're trash, basically. They're too expensive. They've been too expensive, you know, all through 8th. Every time they drop a new chapter approved, I think, you know, have they shaved off 100 points? Is it 185 points now? No, it's still nearly 300. I don't know why they're as expensive as they are. But, you know, they look really cool. They've always been a favourite model of mine aesthetically. They just look great. They're big, chunky units. I will definitely keep using them to put Terminators in. I think that, you know, if they've got any value at all, it might be surprise value because nobody expects people to take them. So if you take 1 or 2 even, you know, you might surprise people enough for them to actually be effective. But I think this is maybe more of a personal choice for me. It's a good way of getting 4 las cannons in the army, though. It's a shame that we dropped the Contaminated Monstrosities stratagem from the Psychic Awakening Codex. I was really, really hoping we would keep that and be able to give things like Land Raiders and Rhinos and Predators disgustingly resilient. We can't. And I was also hoping, well, I mean, really, I was hoping they would get it in the rules themselves. Seeing as the sort of plain vanilla Chaos Lord Terminator Sorcerer, they got it in this book, and they also got Toughness 5. And I was hoping it might spill over to affect the normal vehicles as well, but it didn't. And I suppose the reason for this is the whole only producing rules for the models they make kind of opinion. Seeing as technically, even though, you know, if you're a Death Guard player, you know, you've probably converted things to look all disgusting, but you know, technically the models as sold are not Nurglified, they're not disgustingly resilient, so I suppose that's why they don't have it, but I think they should, and I you know, I was hoping they would for sure. So the Predators, I am a big fan of the Quad Las Predators. I know a lot of people like the autocannon ones because it's, you know, it's 2d3 shots at damage 3, but for me the AP -1 is a bit too unreliable. I'd rather know that I'm going to punch through the armour with the las cannons. And one thing that I don't want to overlook, because there is a stratagem that I think is, you know, potentially pretty useful. It's 2 command points. It's called Sickly Corrosion, and what this does is you use it in the fight phase or the shooting phase when a Death Guard model from your army makes an attack with a plague weapon that scores a hit against an enemy unit. Now, to me, the wording means that you can use it after you've scored the hit, because it specifically says use it when a Death Guard model from your army makes an attack with a plague weapon, that scores a hit. It doesn't say, you know, when they fire or when they're selected to shoot. It's when they score a hit. So that's quite good, that you don't use this stratagem and then miss. That would be annoying for 2 command points. Basically, any other units for the rest of the turn, any other units that are shooting that unit can reroll wound rolls of 1. So in effect, if you shot something at a, you know, let's say you had an enemy tank, maybe a repulsor or an Imperial Knight, and you shot them with, you know, your first Predator or anything really, you know, your Plague Burst Mortar you could do it on. If you use this, you spend 2 CP. For the rest of the turn, any other units, in effect, are plague weapons. You can reroll 1s to wounds, so, you know, all the las cannons, if you had some las cannons going into something, they'd be wounding on 3s. Now re-rolling 1s. This is definitely something you're going to do if there's a particular model you want to bring down, and I think it's really good. It's not something I was expecting necessarily, but I'm happy it's in here, especially because we lost the Wormspitter relic, which was essentially a bolt pistol with a longer range, which allowed you to do the same thing. Anything you hit with it for the rest of the turn, any other weapon shooting them would count as plague weapons, and I never got a chance to use that. I always wanted to take it, you know, and get something, just pop something with the bolt pistol and then have my Predators or something count as plague weapons against it, maybe even within Arch Contaminator range, but I never got a chance to. So it's very nice that there's a stratagem that basically does the same thing now. Right, and now we're moving on to the Defiler. Now, the Defiler is my favourite demon engine. It always has been. I like it more than any of the new, you know, Maul of Fiends, Helldrakes and things. There's just something about it that looks just straight up classic chaos. It's also a unit that for a long time really didn't have good rules, wasn't worth taking. But again, 8th I think breathed new life into it, and it's been a pretty good unit ever since. And it's still definitely a good unit now. Now I don't really look at it as a Death Guard unit, to be honest. I don't have a Death Guard one. I don't think many people do. I don't see them that often. Maybe some of the Plague Hulks from Forge World, but not really Defilers. But that being said, it is a good unit. It's got 5 attacks base now. That's really cool. It doesn't have Disgustingly Resilient either, which is a shame. I was definitely hoping this, seeing as it's a demon engine, you know, I was hoping that maybe it would at least be a blanket rule for demon engines, but it doesn't have it either. It does still regain 1 wound in each command phase though, with Infernal Regeneration. Now, one of the reasons I like the Defiler is because it's one of the few models in the game without, you know, spilling over into Forge World that has strength 16, because it's strength 8, which is unusual for, you know, 40k. Not much is strength 8. Times 2, AP -3, damage d6. Now it is a shame that it's stayed d6. I think putting it up to 2d3 or, you know, d3 plus 3 like a lot of other large fists have become. But, you know, d6 is okay still. And strength 16, again, you know, to have I think it's 160 points, 165 points, something like that. To have a unit for that few points that can, you know, wound a knight on 2s. Not that they're hard to kill. I know they're not hard to kill, but it's still good. You know, it could be a Gorkanaut, Morkanaut, that sort of thing. Battle Wagon with Ardcase. You know, to be strength 16 within a normal 40k army within the Codex, it's pretty rare, I think, and it's definitely one of the reasons that he's so, yeah, 165 points. Although I would give him a Scourge, so he'd be 175 points for me, because the Scourge is also really good. It's +4 strength, so he's strength 12 with this Scourge, AP -2, damage 2, and it makes 3 additional attacks with this weapon. So, you know, that could be 5 attacks with the claws and +3 attacks with this weapon, or I think you could even make all 8 attacks with this weapon if you dedicated to it. He has contagions, so he would be wounding, even with this Scourge actually, he would be wounding toughness 7 vehicles on 2s because he'd be putting them down to strength, toughness 6, and he is now strength 12. So, or with that being said, he could even wound toughness 9 models on 2s with his claws. Man, the defilers are just solid. They're so solid. They've got 14 wounds, 5 attacks, very heavy damage, strength 16, strength 12 with the flail. And also something that you shouldn't overlook is the defiler cannon is now not just a battle cannon. It's essentially a battle cannon in all the other respects, but it's now a flat damage 3. It's just strength 8, AP -2, damage 3. This is great. This is so good. Again, I don't have a Death Guard one. I think I'm more excited about using the defiler in the normal Kill Space Marines Codex because I've got literally about 8 of them, about 8 of them for my Iron Warriors, and I can't wait to start using them. But that being said, even within the Death Guard Codex, obviously he can heal up to 3 wounds with the stratagem, Infernal Greed or something. He can, if you were poxmongers, if you were taking Defiler, you probably would be poxmongers. He can also use the stratagem that would allow him to shoot this battle cannon in close combat. He'd be hitting on 2s with D6 shots, strength 8, AP -2, damage 3 in combat in the shooting phase, and then he'd get all these horrible strength 16 attacks with his claws and the scourge. Brutal model. I think for 165 points is spot on, really spot on. He's really good, but you just don't see many of them for the Death Guard. The Rhino. The Rhino, I feel like he's getting more expensive every time you see it. It's creeping up in points. It's now 80 points in this codex as opposed to 75. I suppose you could say that 5 points is for the contagion. He is essentially just a box that radiates a -1 toughness aura. For me, I'd say they're definitely pretty invaluable. I run rhinos a lot. I love Plague Marines in rhinos. Even once they're done protecting, they're very good at running off, sitting on objectives. They're pretty hard to get rid of. -1 damage, Oh no, sorry, they don't have that. What am I talking about? I was getting excited then. They don't have -1 damage. Don't listen to me. They don't have -1 damage. But they do have contagions, and they're still going to be good at just sitting around on objectives. They're always something that's quite annoying for people to get rid of. So, yeah. It's a rhino. I can't really go to talk too much about rhinos, although, if you're playing a defensive game, don't forget about doing things like this and just creating border walls. That's what I like to do with rhinos. Get them, like this or like this, and just have units behind them and just use them as a complete pain for people to have to destroy or go a long way around. They're useful. Now Mortarion. I was debating whether to give Mortarion his own video, but I think that a lot of what needs to be said about Mortarion is already out there. I don't own Mortarion. I've never got around to buying him yet, and to be perfectly honest, I don't plan to. I don't plan to own this model. Narratively, I don't like him. He's a bum. He's a lousy, no good, stinking bum. I'm definitely, a big fan of Typhus, but Mortarion's just a bum, isn't he, really? But, and I never liked him in terms of the rules. He was always just that big, expensive model that got one-shotted, at the beginning of the game, and people just piled onto him. And he just couldn't, keep up with the amount of firepower that people would level against him, and he'd never really survive past turn 1 or turn 2 if he went first. And when they were redoing the rules for this model, I was sort of banking on one of two things. I was hoping that he'd either drop 2 wounds and be able to benefit from obscuring, or he would get the sort of Gauskull, Catan wound limit of maybe 6 wounds a phase or something, and he didn't get either of those. So there was a while when it was confirmed that he didn't have either of those things. That I'd already written him off. I'd gone, they've messed it up again. He hasn't. He's not going to survive. But then actually, you know, slapping, you know, 4 warlord traits on him essentially, because he has 3 built in, and then he gets 1 extra contagion one from one of the plague companies. You know, it's sort of made up for it actually, because he still has fundamentally the same saves he used to have: 3+ armor save, 4+ invulnerable save, and the 5+ disgustingly resilient. But he's now toughness 8, and he has the -1 damage, so his survivability has gone up considerably. You can still cast miasma on him, or have him cast miasma himself for the you know, pretty much permanent -1 to hit that he's going to have on him. You know, his scythe is more reliable at D3 + 3 damage, so, you know, instead of D6 damage, which could flop sometimes. 7 attacks, but I mean, he will still delete most things that he encounters. I don't think I'm as hyped on him as a lot of other people on the internet seem to be. I've seen all these videos about him being broken and how he's, you know, this new big thing, and, you know, I do disagree. I think that if somebody wants him dead, the extra bonuses of, you know, -1 damage and being toughness 8 now, I don't think it's going to save him if somebody really wants him dead. And I do think that for 490 points, he'd still be too much reliability for me, even though he is flat out undeniably better than he was. That's not in question. He's much better. He's had nothing but buffs. You know, it's the toxic presence. I think a lot of people are excited about. He counts as the full 12 inches from turn 1, and he essentially turns off people's auras with the living plague. Now he doesn't turn off the aura from the model that casts it. What he does is he turns off the aura from the unit that's being affected by it. So if you had a lieutenant out of range affecting a unit within his range, then it doesn't need to get to the lieutenant. It just turns the unit off of the unit that was in range. So it's, you know, it's really good. There's a lot of good stuff you can do with him. He's got the chapter master reroll thing. I don't know, I think I'm just not a fan of these giant models that you put down, because, you know, regardless of how much stuff they get stacked on them, when you're facing 2,000 points, you know, if it wants you dead, it's going to kill you. It's going to kill you. But we'll see. You know, it's not something I'm worried about, because I don't use him anyway. I've got no plans to use him, even if he was incredible, and he is incredible. But even if he was just, you know, Nightbringer level crazy, I still wouldn't bother, because I just don't like him. Don't like him narratively. I don't think I've got anything really to say about him that hasn't already been covered by everybody else, other than that he's a bum. But no, he is great. He is really good. The sheer amount of abilities from, you know, 4 warlord traits, oh, it's pretty horrific. Yeah, you know, I'm gonna just leave it there. Really, I think that if you've probably made up your opinion anyway, regardless of what I see, I think most people are pretty sold on Mortarion. There's not really many crazy, you know, combos you can do with him. You know, one thing that was good in 8th edition was obviously if you take a, you know, an allied Chaos Space Marine sorcerer, you could get your warp time off on him. You could still do that now. He has the Heretic Astartes keyword, but you would be sacrificing your army-wide -1 toughness. And I don't think anybody is going to do that. I really don't think anybody's going to do that for taking, you know, a warp time sorcerer or some objective holding nurglings. I don't think that you're going to see people giving up this -1 toughness, because it's such a big deal. It's really big deal. And then Miasmic Malignifier, which I think should just be called the Plague Furnace, really. It's clearly just a Plague Furnace, but, you know, Miasmic Malignifier. It's better than I expected it to be. I never expect much from these types of terrain. I think a lot of people are pretty disappointed in their army's terrain. You certainly never seem to see them very often, but this is pretty good. The reason I think that the main reason I think it's so good is that, surprisingly, and I didn't expect this at all, surprisingly, it's set up anywhere on the board. It's not something that has to sit in your deployment zone. You can set it up anywhere on the board that's more than 12 inches away from the enemy deployment zone. So you can put it right on an objective, maybe. You can put it ahead of your army and advance up towards it, because it does give you a constant light cover bonus, and if you already have light cover, it's -1 to hit as well. So if you were deployed, you know, here, and there was a building or something there that would give you cover, you could put this plague furnace, I'm going to call it plague furnace, you could put it there already, and then move up in your turn 1, and now you've got -1 to hit as well as +1 save. Or if maybe there's an objective in the open somewhere, you know you want to get on that objective, it's going to provide you cover. You're going to have 2+ armor safe plague marines, or, you know, 1+ save in effect terminators. It's definitely useful, and it counts as being the maximum contagion range all the time, which is 12 inches. So, you know, you can deploy it more than 12 inches away from your opponent, but it means that you can, you know, essentially set it so that if they move, they will be in contagion range, which will, you know, be something you could capitalize on in your next shooting phase. So it's surprisingly useful, actually. It's surprisingly useful. I could definitely see myself really annoying people by just sticking it right out there, either on an objective that I wanted, or maybe one that they wanted, or just putting it in their way, and meaning that if they move forwards without killing it, then they're going to be -1 toughness, you know, immediately on turn 1 ready for my turn 1, and then I can capitalize on that. You know, again, if we were talking Marines or something, you know, people being in range of this, it would mean that any blight launches you had would be wounding on 2s immediately, you know, so, and they're core choices. So if you had a lot of blight launchers, they'd be, you know, hitting on 3s, 2s maybe, if you had the Tollkeeper guy. He's not called the Tollkeeper, is he? The Relic is the Tollkeeper. What's he called? Tallyman. If you had the Tallyman, you know, rerolling 1s to hit for a Chaos Lord, rerolling 1s to wound for Plague Weapon. It's just really useful. And also it's 2 parts. You've got the big part and the small part, and they have to be set up within 6 inches of each other, which means that really, you know, the area denial is pretty good as well. You can set them up the full 6 inches apart from each other. You know, that's probably, you know, the space of a good sized tank. You could probably just straight up block somewhere off if there was 2 bits of terrain, 2 large impassable bits of terrain. You could put this in between them, cover a 6-inch space, and make it so that your opponent has to destroy a unit to even be able to move forwards. So, you know, if maybe they were planning to zoom forwards with their own Rhino or something on turn 1, straight up the side there onto an objective, you know, if you've deployed this in the gap between the terrain features, they would have to kill it before they could do that, and which means they essentially couldn't really move in the movement phase too much, because they, you know, if you put it 12 inches away, it means they can move, you know, essentially a maximum of 11 inches. Yeah, I think this is going to be a really annoying thing, and it's only 75 points, and that's why I think it's so good, because 75 points, you know, you could definitely slot this in fairly easily. Will I take one? I think maybe, but if I'm perfectly honest, I'm not a huge fan of the model itself. It looks very Age of Sigmar. I don't want this channel to become one of those channels where I just complain about, you know, my grimdark. But there is a limit for me, I think. I'm not too strict on the grimdark, but this is a bit much. This is an Age of Sigmar model, really. I think that they could have made something quite scary, quite shocking, quite horrible, more in keeping with, I think, how you imagine 40k Plague Marines to be quite scary. And they didn't really do it. I mean, I think one of the things that bothers me a lot is this big Nurgle symbol. It's just an actual merchandise symbol that you'd get on a shirt. It's not something that I imagine the Death Guard, the actual Plague Marines of the Death Guard, Chaos Space Marine Legion, putting these big 3 skulls on something with the triple point of of Nurgle. It's a bit much, it's a bit much for me, but it's definitely useful. So I definitely won't be surprised if we start seeing these all over the place now, because I think that anything that you can just deploy outside of your zone and just get right in people's ways, I mean, it's great. Now that's the end of the book now. That's all I'm going to go through in this book, so I think that this will end part 3, and I think what I will do now is make a couple of shorter videos, again, because I haven't covered everything. I skimmed through the stratagems and I barely covered the warlord traits or relics or anything, so I think I'll do some shorter, maybe 10-minute videos based on those, and then move on to some different topics. So thank you again if you've sat through this as well. I hope you'll stick around and catch me on my next topic.